our beautiful azaleas. How do you steal our hearts with these beautiful blooms in spring? Many gardeners think that the blossoms of rhododendrons and azaleas are the most highly anticipated time of the year. I must disagree. I still think that the most highly anticipated time would be the time when our roses are blooming. But you can't deny that this beautiful performance of our azaleas and rhododendrons do take our heart away. And azaleas perform with, they put everything into these blooms, and they perform so luxuriously during this time of spring. So today we are going to talk how to plant, grow and care for these magnificent, very low maintenance plants in our gardens. There are several important requirements which we have to follow and enjoy the life and color. Botanically, azaleas belong to the genus Rhododendron. And you can see why rhododendrons and azaleas do look alike, and they do have cultural requirements the same, but they are different. Azaleas are usually much smaller generally than rhododendrons. Azaleas do have 5 stamens in their flower. Rhododendrons have 10 or more. And azaleas can be evergreen or deciduous, meaning that they drop their leaves to the ground. But the majority of azaleas which are growing in the gardens are evergreen azaleas. And this is evergreen azalea. I don't really know which azalea it is. We inherited it with the house, and it is probably more than 10 years old. I never trimmed it, and you see how it's spreading wherever it wants to go. I think that's the best way to keep azaleas instead of giving them that rigid form. And I understand in some gardens we do have to have that rigid shape. But this azalea never was trimmed by me, and I think she's quite happy, don't you? But coming back to azaleas and rhododendrons. Majority of true rhododendrons are evergreen, and majority of azaleas are deciduous, but majority of them growing in our gardens are evergreen. So rhodies and azaleas require the same growing environment. And which one is that? I must say it's very important to give azaleas dappled shade, not to put azaleas in the full sun, but there are thousands and thousands of different azalea varieties, and the breeding efforts are in the direction of making azaleas more hardy, more be able to tolerate sun, since azaleas are so popular in southern regions of United States. They're quite popular here in Connecticut too, due to Connecticut acidic soils, and azaleas do like soils to be on the acidic side. If you have alkaline side, azaleas will struggle in the garden. So dappled shade, acidic soil, something from 4.5 to 6 on the pH scale, and anything lower than 7 would be going into the acidic side. So ideal location for our azaleas would be somewhere under the evergreen needle trees, where needles will make the environment a little bit more acidic. Needles will cover the soil, protect the shallow roots of azaleas. That's another thing to keep in mind, that azaleas are very shallow rooted, and we have to be particular about watering these beautiful plants before they get established in our gardens. So you bought your azalea from the store into your garden, and usually azaleas are sold as potted plants. Majority of them are sold in spring when we can see their blooms. And you brought your plant into the garden, and now it's a planting time. Also very important for the life of the plant. So what should we do for azaleas? Azaleas are famous to have very shallow roots, and azaleas do love nice, fertile, acidic soils. So if you want your plants to thrive in the garden, you will choose semi-dappled shade. If you don't have that in the garden, if you have to choose the sunny location, make sure that at least azaleas have that afternoon break, afternoon shade and morning sun. As for the planting hole, make sure that you dig your hole to the length of the potting container. Make sure that your hole is wider, and make sure that you do add organic matter into the soil. Azaleas, again, they do have shallow roots and they hate waterlogged conditions. So if you have clay soils, trouble. Azalea is not going to thrive unless you condition that soil to make it more, have more drainage in it. Azaleas are almost growing here without effort here in Connecticut because our soils are very sandy, acidic, and it's a perfect place for rhododendrons and azaleas. So make sure that you add organic matter into the soil. Organic matter, what it does for sandy soils, it helps sandy soils to keep moisture and keep nutrients instead of leaching it all out. And for clay soils, organic matter helps to make the soil more porous, more easier for water and nutrients to penetrate. So that would be a good suggestion for planting azaleas. As for the level, how high you should put azalea plants, make sure that the top of the root ball is the same level as the soil or a little bit higher. As for the care after you do the planting, the best time to plant azalea would be in the early fall, when these magnificent plants do have time to acclimate with their shallow roots and get used for winter and then perform in spring. But of course, we, the gardeners, who are used to get plants as soon as we want them, we want to see the blooms, of course, right? So we do all our purchasing of azalea in spring, and we do plant in spring. So if you do that, make sure that your shallow-rooted azalea is mulched going into hot days of summer. Why mulch is important? Because the evaporation is happening so much faster in summer. Shallow roots of azalea are prone to losing that access to water so much faster. And especially evergreen azaleas, which are the majority azaleas we are growing. So make sure that you use organic mulch. Something like wood bark would be good, chipped wood, or compost would be a good layer of compost would be great. And make sure that that compost is not touching the stems of azalea. In my garden, I have 6 different azaleas, and I must say that this one is the fastest to bloom, somewhere at the end of April, the beginning of May. And I do have 2 cents to put about the flower of azaleas. Azaleas do not shed their blossoms very well, so these blossoms have a tendency to stay on top of the foliage and then slowly with rain and time to disappear. So I must say that this azalea is the best to hide the old blooms. I have white azalea blooming at the back where we have our dinner table. And it's a disaster. Every time that azalea stops blooming, those beautiful white blooms are looking dirty, brown, and every year I am so tired of those colors that I manually come in and just take all the used blossoms, which can be a big headache. So do take that into consideration when you're considering what color azaleas to buy. I do love this azalea, and I think I'm going to propagate it. And how to do it, the easy way, would be just after the blooming time, sometime in summer, just put one of these low growing branches and tuck them into the soil with the help of stone. I'm going to do it somewhere on this side. And then next year, make sure that you cut the stem connecting mother plant with baby plant, let it grow for a little bit, get adjusted, and then you can take it out and have another bush like that. So if you are choosing plants to introduce into your new garden, do look at azaleas. The bottom line is they're very easy to grow plants as long as their basic needs of watering, sun location, and soil acidity is met. you will have these beautiful plants, almost disease-free, carefree, growing, creating a nice green canopy during the rest of the year. And then in spring, oh, magnificent blooms. How can you beat them? Again, 2 cents. I think roses can. Happy gardening. We'll see you around.